All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome back. This is Anatomically Speaking, the Infinite Eleven's Anatomically Speaking. This is a podcast that's in reference to our video series, Anatomy of Horror. And this past couple of weeks, we've been talking about Jonathan Demme's masterpiece, The Silence of the Lambs. And with me, I have my team of the 811.net. I have head writer Kristen Grady. All right, well done.
Sounds weird to me.
Okay, just how about writer? Just a rando writer, Kristen Grady.
That sounds really fancy.
Film analyst.
I'm not the only writer.
Film analyst.
You're not, but you write the most stuff for the site.
I do.
Yeah. Okay.
You let me. That's your fault.
It actually. So many things are my fault. Anyways, it's the list, and of course, our own, also of the A1.net, Sean Sanford.
Hello.
There you go. Right on. Okay. All right, cool. So again, this is first time watching this podcast. Again, what we're talking about are not just the overall film, but we're talking about certain scenes of the movie, really important scenes that will pop into your head when you think about a movie. And so we'll get right into it. And probably the most important relationship in the film is between Agent Clarice Starling, Jodie Foster, and Hannibal Lecter, Sir Anthony Hopkins. Obviously, there's a lot of really good stuff between them. But I do want to talk really quick about Kristen Grady, a piece she wrote quite some time ago. But it was a fantastic. I want to leave a link below about that. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about your article. It definitely has a lot to do with these scenes.
Well, I had gone into each. There's actually 4 scenes between Starling and Lecter, and they're definitely some of the most iconic scenes. That everybody knows. But what I had done was I looked like really deep into like police interrogation techniques, but also the FBI too, more towards the FBI, interrogation techniques, because there's 2 different ways that law enforcement officers in general interrogate a suspect. Either they use the Reed method, which is, we know you did it. They're just like basically threatening somebody into confessing, which is still applied a lot. And then there is, the method they actually use that gets to the truth of matters, which is establishing a rapport and, just like asking sort of guiding questions. But what I had to factor in was that Hannibal Lecter is not the average criminal. Most criminals are kind of stupid. He's very smart, and he's a psychiatrist. He knows all the tricks. And I had to factor in the fact that Starling isn't a full agent yet. She's brand new at this job, very talented, has a lot of promise, but I had to think, okay, how realistic is this, factoring in all of these things? And just going through like each of the beats of the scenes, it's very accurate, and understanding the different techniques that they're using and stuff really adds so much more depth to both the characters and the story.
So in your assessment though of it, in your opinion, it's written very, very well, right? As far as the actual standards go with the FBI.
Yeah, I had read that Jodie Foster had worked with an FBI agent at Quantico, like in preparation for her role. But it's based on a novel. Excuse me. So, the procedural sort of it was already established.
Right.
But definitely the acting is very important to how the scenes come across. And I can't think of any 2 actors that play off of each other as well in any movie, and it is just so tense, and there's glass between them in every scene. It's that like our there's no way that two characters can be more disconnected and connected at the same time. It is
Right.
and they're both like trying to get this information. I really kept thinking of it as like a either like fencing, like a sword fight, or like a tango. You know, it's like this like give and take. They're pushing and pulling on each other until they both get to this conclusion that they really wanted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's a police procedural, but it's got so much going on. There's so much depth, especially to those scenes, and just pretty much every line you learn more about the characters.
Yeah, no, and you mentioned something really interesting too, again, about the acting in it too as well. And we go into pretty great detail in the Anatomy of Horror series, but the fact that the camera is a series of just close-ups, right? Is that, and you know, when you watch most films, when you get subjective as in personal, right, versus impersonal or objective, usually, you know, they will break it up, right? So when, you know, if we're all talking together and you were cutting back between me and Kristen, right, that this is very obviously personal, but usually you throw in something that's kind of like an objective shot, right? Maybe go back to the master shot, something that's, you know, to kind of take you out of the action a little bit, just a device in storytelling. With Jonathan Demme, is like, nah, I'm not gonna fucking do any of that shit, right? Like, so especially in those scenes, like he doesn't break away. It's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it's just like he starts off like an, you know, he really doesn't go any further than like maybe a mid to close up shot, and it just, and they are usually acting so often in this tiny little box, right? And what was really interesting is that, you know, back in the day, they knew this film was going to be shown on a screen, right? And so the idea is that any kind of movement when the camera is that close up on you, right? Any kind of weird movement that you do with your eyebrow, whatever, like it's going to be like if you do this with your forehead, that's going to be like 6 feet on screen. So it was just such an interesting thing to see these two actors, and of course, you know, Anthony Hopkins, and you know, very skilled actor. We didn't really know much about him at the time, or he wasn't the Anthony Hopkins that we know of. But of course, Jodie Foster had been acting since she was a child. But yeah, just fan. So especially in that first scene, Sean, did you? There had to have been some really really cool stories, the way they shot that, or anything behind the scenes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, speaking of those two actors together, working together, one thing I read was that Jodie Foster was saying that her and Anthony Hopkins didn't really talk much at all besides when they were filming together. And she said that it made her kind of really intimidated by him and really kind of scared of him, which I think sort of also translates to her role, or to her role in their relationship in a way where she's just very, you know, like holds him very much with respect, even though he's a killer. I mean, there's
doctor.
What's that?
Still a very accomplished doctor.
It's true. You take away all the other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like all the people whose lives he improved with his psychiatry. You never hear about that stuff.
You never do.
Hear about Hitler's pain either, you know.
No, you never do. Well, sometimes you do, but you know, I think there's a reason why we don't. But yeah.
Yeah. But one thing that I loved reading about was how much Anthony Hopkins put into that role is just it's incredible. I mean, he went to several trials of serial killers and murderers, just to watch the process of I'm sure also the judicial system and the way that the more specifically the way that the killers would act. And there's also several subtleties that he was responsible for, one of which was, if you think about the very first shot when he's introduced, it's sort of a panning shot and he's already looking at the camera when he sees you, or when you see him. Yep. And that's just such a bone-chilling shot anyway.
Totally.
And he said that when he was filming that shot, he said, I want to be looking at the camera when it first shows me, because then the audience will feel that I already know everything. That's awesome. And I thought that was just such incredible, I don't know, just such great acting.
You know, I mean, in the way his performance in this too, and again, in the way that Jonathan Demme had chosen to shoot him, it's so fucking predatory. Makes sense the way they're right, the way, and usually again, like when they do the back and forth between him and Starling, he always ends up towards the end of the scenes like in this predatory stare, and his eyes are almost always higher in the frame when they cut back and forth between he and Starling, right? Like um, a clear tie into the fact that she sees him and he sees himself as above her, right? It makes sense because again, like that, I think clearly it's her most. I think in the movie it's her most important relationship, right? Her and Lecter, but it's just as important, I think, for the character for like Jack Crawford, right? And I find that was so interesting to me that the way that they filmed both, Crawford and Starling and Lecter and Starling. But Demi had a very clear idea of what he really wanted to do in those scenes. And again, it was just, that, that you always get the feeling that he's playing with her, right? That he's toying with her.
Yeah.
And was another kind of interesting tidbit was that, and I know Kristen and I spoke about this when you were working on the article, is that, and Sean, you were just saying with that first shot, right? When you're going by and you seeing him behind that plastic wall or that whatever that was. And the first thing that was in my mind when I saw it was it reminded me of a hamster cage. Right. And so in the article, Kristen, you have some really interesting things because you do talk a lot about Dr. Chilton.
Yeah, that guy's a creep.
Right. do you want to tell us any more about him? I don't know. What do you think?
Okay. You saying the thing about their faces being on the screen, being 6 feet tall and stuff really helps me think about, analyzing, the close-ups in the film, because there are a lot of them, and it makes you very intensely like intimate with the characters. And whenever Chilton is in the scene, like you're like want to go take a shower afterwards or something, like this guy just like oozes this creepiness, and he's more evil than Lecter. I think that's what we were kind of getting at, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely more unlikable.
Not more evil, but like he's a worse person almost. Because, okay, hear me out.
He's a slime bag. He's a slime. Okay.
But I've said too much.
Yes.
Okay, well, what I was thinking about this before, actually, is that Lecter doesn't just toy with Starling. He sees potential in her. He wants her to live up to that potential too. And he sees something really good that wants to come out of her. And Chilton wants to fuck her. So,
right.
Yeah, who's a better person? I mean, it's not that he's better or anything. It's just like there's something more likable about Lecter. And
you had to make him likable, right? It would be a tough thing to do. He's such a integral part of the movie, right? If you were to follow along with this person who is just despicable.
Yeah.
He's definitely not the villain, right?
No, I mean, Buffalo Bill is.
Buffalo Bill, yeah. Like not even right, yeah, absolutely. But no, yeah. Yeah, no, and no, I just remember in your article, you definitely had some interesting things to say about Chilton.
But I should have read it before.
It's okay. No, again. No, again, I mean, what you just said makes sense. Again, is that, that when it came down to how you felt about certain people, again, is that you understood what their motivations were, right? And Dr. Chilton's motivations were, for Starling, was to fucking have sex with her, but his motivations for Lecter were much more sinister, and that's where it ties into the fact that, like what Sean was saying, that first shot, right? Yeah. You're looking at Lecter for the first time, and that just jarring instance of him just looking at you, looking at the audience. But he's pictured like he is being toyed with, right? Like what you would put a gerbil in. You would put, right? You get a gerbil or a hamster. Yeah. Right, exactly, right? You put it in those plastic things with the holes, right? And that's, in my opinion, that's what the film language is saying. And I think it just comes together so unbelievably well in that scene.
Yeah. Well, I got the sense, I'm not sure if I said it in the article, but is that Chilton sort of uses Lecter as like like an exhibit almost,
Yep.
like saying, hey, see my hospital open. Look at this cool subject that we have that we're studying. And that's something that I hadn't thought of. And like, I've seen this movie probably more than any other horror movie. Like, I'm from Virginia. This is like an intensely personal movie for me, but I learned so much more writing about it. I didn't think it was possible. But yeah, you can tell so much more about their relationship because Lecter doesn't see Chilton as above him at all. Like, he doesn't see anybody above him really, because he's a sociopath, and that's kind of the definition of a sociopath, is they sort of see themselves as above humanity a little bit. I'm not a psychiatrist, don't quote me. Right. But the fact that Chilton does kind of play these really petty games with him, like putting the televangelist TV in there and turning off the lights and taking away his drawings and stuff like that, makes him so much stupider. And like, Lecter comes up with this escape plan that's freaking genius. And like, it's not revenge, he just wants to get free, but he still shows so much more like planning ability. Like, he's just so much smarter than Chilton, and it's frustrating to see Lecter be imprisoned by somebody like that. You're kind of happy in the end that it's implied that he gets eaten.
Yeah, and no, that's true. It's true, and I think that it does too. I mean, it definitely does add to the argument of Chilton as a human being. Again, that he was getting joy out of this, and you do have to admit though too as well that Lecter was losing that battle. Clearly, he didn't have the power in that relationship. But yeah, there was something dirty about a human being, right? That would have somebody in that situation and play those kinds of games just for your own personal, right?
Yeah,
your own personal joy.
Yeah, by taking his drawings away. Like, this isn't therapeutic. You're just being punitive and an asshole.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. So actually, we'll move on. And again, like, things obviously at this point, when you get to the final scene, we're not talking about the final scene, of course, is when Lecter is in the alternate location, when he is in that giant cage, right? Because that's obviously how we see him all the time, is in a cage in that kind of pattern. We always see him in squares and rectangles. But of course, by this point, he and Starling have built up quite a relationship. What are some of those stories? I know that scene alone too as well, that clearly there's more going on, and that adds into other things too as well. But what are some of the stories that you could tell us, Sean, about happened or how they filmed that?
Well, I know one story that I thought was was kind of interesting was, and again to show what an incredibly professional and just amazing actress Jodie Foster is. When she's telling the story, the second half of her story, when she's telling about the Silence of the Lambs, the story of like hearing the lambs or not hearing the lambs, but there's, I forget what line, but it says it on IMDb. You can see where it says like what line she says, and right when she says that, right when she's in the middle of this incredible monologue, you can hear something like in the background, and it turns out that and it's played off as just sort of ambient noise that's in where he's being held, but it was actually like a crew member dropping a wrench, and the fact, and she's in this very intense monologue, and she just completely holds it, and I read that a lot of the folks who were working on the movie, they just thought that she didn't hear it or something, and then as soon as the yell cut, she was like, "What the hell was that?"
She almost had her Christian Bale moment, right?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, speaking of which, that freaking monologue, again, just the acting too as well. You're right about that. I don't know, Kristen, you did theater, right? You have a degree in theater as well. So yeah, you're an actress, right?
Evergreen State College. So.
Right, but like anytime, right, when you start off, anytime you start off acting, right? You're a newbie, you're fresh, and they pick a monologue for you. It's never this kind of monologue, right? It never is, right? They would never have you do that because it's too nuanced, it's too subtle. They're always going to give you a monologue that is, from Glengarry Glen Ross, if you're a guy, right? Something where you clearly want something, right? Because your motivations, your wants and needs are more obvious to you. But this is so much different, right? This is her again, and they actually move in on her, right? They start with a close-up and then they end in an extreme close-up. And it's just like the fact that she holds it and she's trying to convey something that she doesn't want to say, but she's saying anyways.
And in a way, she really does too.
Right, exactly. Needs to get it out, exactly, right. And at the same, and it's a release for the person that you're not even seeing, right? Because usually there's that A and B pattern that Jonathan Demme always establishes, right? The A and B, A Lecter, B Starling. He doesn't do that really. Jonathan Demme just kind of lets her have that moment, right? And it's so weird too, right? As a choice for a director, because again, this is what Lecter wanted, right? He wanted it for himself because he wanted it for her, right? That's that little tiny thing about Lecter that really humanizes him and connects us to the character, right? That's how we are connected to like a psychopath you could never even dream up, right? Really, it's just any person really can't think of a human that would do those types of things. But he never gives us that. It's just so important for Jodie Foster and for that to just show her all the way. But it's one of the best shots in the film. Unbelievable performance, man. So good. And I think she did win the Academy Award for that. Yes,
she did. Yeah.
And that film won, I think, 5.
It won all the 5. It won director, screenplay.
That almost never happens either.
Actor. Yeah, it's only happened 2 other times. I think it is. Yeah.
Wow.
I love this entire scene. But one of the things that I love pinpointing in a movie, I always have to grab a screenshot of it, is that click moment when like everything about a character makes sense. And almost every movie has this. It's like a moment where you're like, oh, that's why you're like this. And it's when she's I'm not sure if it's a very specific moment, but it is this monologue, and it's when she's definitely like going into that like trauma flashback phase, and you can see like her eyes sort of glaze over when she says it was very cold, like it's like she's feeling it again.
She says it twice, right? She says it twice, like very cold. Yeah.
It's like, it's not that she's trying to dramatize it to make him feel it more. It's almost like she's trying to not make excuses, but justify what she did. Like she still feels guilty for stealing the lamb or something. And there's so much going on here. She definitely needs to confess this. She's probably never talked about it before. She's talking about it with this serial killer who's trying to get into her head, and there's another one on the loose, but she wants to save that girl so bad. The last thing she would ever want to talk about with the last person she would ever want to talk about it with suddenly becomes on the table. And I think that's what's so great about that character and the entire movie is that you can see the potential in these people. You can kind of see that Hannibal's going to get out at the end almost, is that like he seems way too smart to be imprisoned anywhere. Bill, you know that he's going to get caught. There's sort of like 3 characters, really, 3 main characters in the movie. This scene is just, it's so intense. You can't look away, and it's only talking. And that's really what's unique about the movies. I mean, the scenes between Lecter and Starling,
just talking,
is that they're so intense, and you can't look away, but it's just talking.
Absolutely.
How many movies, especially horror movies, can say that? Like, you are just absolutely riveted and absolutely terrified by talking.
Yeah. No, agree, 100%. No, and I think again, and that goes back again, just clearly, I'm sure Jonathan Demme reads the script, and again, the first thing he's thinking is, like how this is the guy he did, like Married to the Mob and stuff, like But again, it's like you got to think it's like what which is, by the way, the other movie that song Goodbye Horses is in. Just a weird little piece of trivia. Also another Jonathan Demme. Sorry, Ted Demme was his brother. I don't know. Anyway, or nephew or something. But yeah, no, just knowing, right, that your script that you're reading is so personal and so dialogue driven, and really, it's not just Lecter too, right? I mean, the first scene when she meets Jack Crawford, same thing, right? You're giving out a ton of information, man. It's a lot of exposition, that is just written really done, performed really really well, really really amazingly, and just shot just flawlessly. Again, that style is so odd to me, right? And it's funny, it's so weird because to me, if I saw any other movie and freaking people are looking in, like the actors are looking into the camera, like I think I would notice that, or I like to think I would notice that. This film, right, it just gets so unbelievably personal. And that's why I think really makes it work, right? When they're acting literally into the camera, and it never feels like they're breaking the fourth wall, right? It never feels like a Ferris Bueller moment, right?
That's what's so weird about the close-ups, is that they're not looking at you, they're looking through you.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what makes it so intense, is because it does take you out of the equation.
Absolutely.
And to feel that disembodied, that's some magic right there.
Absolutely, totally, yeah.
No, dude, yeah. So again, and speaking of that super personal style, we're going to talk about the climax scene. But first, before the climax, of course, when we talk about the climax, you're talking about the basement. First, we're actually going to talk about Starling's realization, right, that Bill is Bill. And again, and actually, I don't want to digress too much because again, it's Silence of the Lambs, man. You can talk about almost every scene, right? And just pull something amazing out of it. Sean and I had talked not too long ago about this, about when we are introduced into the scene, the trickery, right? The trickery that of setting us up to get to this point is so interesting to me, right? So I know, Sean, if you want to recap of kind of what we talked about between us.
Just sort of like the way that you think the cops are there. Is that what you're talking about? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. Like, it's so brilliant. And I wish I could remember what it was, but I read I think there's a name for that technique in movies where it's almost like a red herring in a way, where the viewers. What's that?
A switcheroo.
I just said a switcheroo, but that's not
the old switcheroo. But and it's so.
I think it might be a MacGuffin. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. A MacGuffin. I could be totally wrong about that. I think it might be something else. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. But I just think it's so great, and it was cool because when I rewatched that movie, I mean, it was the first time I'd seen it probably since it came out, more or less, or at least like sat down and just watch it all the way through. And when I was watching that scene, I was like, I don't remember he gets busted so soon. That's cool though, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like whatever. I was like, oh, the cops are there, so that's cool. Like, right. She's safe.
Right.
And then when you sort of make that realization, like, oh wait, no, dude, like they're at the wrong house. No. I was seriously pretty much yelling at my TV, like, no.
Yeah, and I think what is just so, again, other than the fact that it just fools everybody. It's just the way in which he does it, right? Because that's the first time he does that. It's the only time, right? Like he saved that that was a trick. But he saved it specifically for this scene. And I think the reason why it's set up so well, because you're just naturally like, oh, they're going to get him, right? That's just because everything Jonathan Demme shows at that point, it happens, right? It's real. There is no reason to not believe the narrator.
Right.
And so when he does this, you fall hook, line, and sinker every time, apparently, too, right? Me too as well, right? Yeah, I hadn't seen it in a while. And I was like, oh, yeah. That's what I was like, dude, but you just look at it like, that's so good. That's so good. So we get to that point, right? And you realize, right? She opens. And I think that's what's so interesting to me about that specific scene, right? When she gets invited in and she's looking around and she, sees the moth, right? It's kind of like, But what's so interesting and what's so good is that, of course, right, that the audience knows, though, right? We know who Bill is. And I thought what was really kind of interesting about that is that, why it works so well is that you don't really know if she's going to make it out of this one, right? Like, yeah, like Kristen mentioned, Bill's going to get caught, true. But I think Jonathan Demme did enough to picture Starling in danger, right? Like even when she's training, right? They shows, remember she's training, she goes in and like, her command, like the guy who's, going through the whole process with her and he comes behind her. He's like, hey, you just got killed, right? When she's in that training thing, right? So that she's not ready yet to the field. And here she is.
The way she pulls her gun out is very shaky too.
Right.
She's like,
see,
right.
Yes, absolutely.
He's not used to it yet. she knows the procedure, just she needs practice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, and I think that's just it in like the way it was shot too as well, right? That the idea, and you caught it on perfectly is when she pulls that gun out. It's just right. Again, it's so personal, right? That gun is just so offensive in your face. But no, just fantastic scene. One of my favorites, but of course that gets us into the climax, right? So Kristen, what do you think about this scene?
Well, I do know a little behind the scenes stuff that Sean may eventually mention, but is that they gave her the blocking and put her in the pitch black basement without being able to see. Ooh. In the like night vision part at the end. And again, that it's like, when we were talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, is that like sometimes you get such a real performance out of actors when you put them in a real situation. And, she's holding the gun with one hand, she's shaking, and, you can feel him almost touch her. Again, that's like, it doesn't need a sound or anything, but when he reaches out and almost touches her, like you get this like chill or something. You want to yell, turn around or something like that. But the scene is so intense and she's still following procedure. Mm-hmm. That's what I found out writing this again too, is that, she secures the exits, you can like from the training scenes before, she checks the corners. She, when she sees the girl, she says, "You're safe," even though neither of them are safe. That's a crazy thing. But obviously they told her, just when you find a victim, just tell them they're safe. So she, out of habit, she's like, "You're safe," even though I don't know where the killer is. I lost him. Just hang on.
She doesn't sound too convincing either, right?
No.
But she's still doing her job, like good for her. It's so intense, and it's like, you almost don't want it to end, but like you do at the same time. It's I love the last scene. I don't know. I don't think I have anything else to say about that.
Oh no, it's no. I think that's a cool. I actually did not know that about the way that they shot that scene. That makes total sense. That makes total sense, right? Because again, like clearly they are using that technique, right? They're giving it. I don't know how they personally shot it. I don't like how they actually did it, but they clearly got that right. They night vision thing like down perfectly. So I'm wondering how they actually got that shot. Now that's going to drive me crazy. I'm gonna have to look it up. How they did that, right? Because I clearly they didn't film it on a night vision goggle,
right?
Yeah,
unless it was like in front of the.
It's not like a making of or something years ago that was about that had mentioned that she filmed that in the dark.
That's awesome.
Maybe I'm wrong completely, and I fabricated that.
And again,
in my head.
Now there's going to be people out there with bad information. They're going to tell stories, right?
Now part of the zeitgeist.
Did you know that Jodie Foster did this in the dark? Yeah.
Jodie Foster's like, who do I have to sue now?
Right.
I actually have an interesting story that I actually do know. Well, I know it's true, as in I read it on the internet, so who knows? But no, I read it from reliable sources. But that Ted Levine, the guy who plays Buffalo Bill, the house that they filmed, at least because I think the basement was a different location. Am I right? Do you know?
I'm guessing it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the upstairs, when he's like in his house, that was filmed in Ted Levine's like hometown, and the house, and it said, so here's where I'm not clear, because it said, it was worded in a way that the house that they decided to use was the house that was like right next door to his high school girlfriend's house. but then I read more carefully, and it said the house that they were looking at was the house. So I don't know if that was the house that they actually used, but either way, like, I don't know. He was like,
I hope that's true.
Yeah,
I hope that's true. I hope that's true. But no, yeah, just that scene, man. I mean, again, that just everything that led up to it, right? The trickery, right? The getting there, the realization, right? Like us, her catching up to us, and then obviously finding herself down there in the basement. And again, is that that again her training is not complete.
Yeah.
And just like Kristen mentioned as well too, is that you listen to her voice and it's just like I'm not buying this shit that you're feeling like that you're feeling you're gonna nail this, dude.
Well, now I'm thinking about it. The first part when she walks in and she's talking to him, and like before she realizes that he's Buffalo Bill and stuff, that's the most tense part of the scene until she's in the dark,
right?
Like, because we know who he is,
right?
Absolutely.
It's sort of slowly dawning on her. She sees the moth, she's looking around, there's sewing stuff, like her detective brain is clicking. Like, okay, my mom's a nurse, and she can walk into like a patient's house and know like exactly like, oh, there's a trip hazard there, they need to get the EKG machine there. Like, she just knows where everything needs to go. And it seems like detectives is the opposite of that. Like they see one thing and then another and then another, and then they see the whole picture. And she's getting there really fast just because she's so close to this case, but it's still not fast enough for us. We're like, he's the killer, do something, run. But she's still, because she's, I think, maybe trying to not let on that she knows who he is. Mm-hmm. She's just asking questions even though she's figuring it out. So she's like, her brain is thinking, oh God, it's him, but it's like, okay, but stay cool. So that's why it's so tense. It's probably like her most intensive police work that she does, other than interacting with Lecter.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, I absolutely agree. No, and again, I think it's just the way that it's shot, and I think that now you bring up a good point, right? Just her kind of figuring everything out. And again, like stylistically, Jonathan Demme was so fucking consistent in this film that, like, again, it's such a personal way to shoot it. Is that, again, how many movies had that much POV, how much that point of view shots, right? It's just to where like you just accept it for what it is. It's not overused. It's just a part of the style. And I think, again, like the whole building it together, when you see you're building it kind of with her. But again, of course, we know what's going to happen. And then I think to even add to it, which kind of heightens the tension, is that there was that scene when, or that part of the scene where Bill is going through like his little cards, right? He's like, oh, that's not it, and he's kind of tossing them and going through them. Is that they show the point of view from the kitchen, and they show that's where his gun is right there, right? So just like in your head, right? Again, I mean, that just adds to it, to the point you're thinking like, man, if she doesn't figure this out, he's
right there,
right? Like, if she doesn't figure this out, he's just gonna walk in that kitchen, turn around and like blast her, right? That's probably what's gonna happen. But just such a good scene. Yeah, dude, I don't know. Again, like, you just go on and on, right? And talk about all these little tiny things, especially about that.
I love a scene where you can tell there's more than one train of thought going on in a character's head.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You see exactly what they're thinking, because the scene is just so intense, and that's definitely.
And you're right, Jodie Foster, clearly right. She was just obviously really good at doing, especially that.
Well, even Buffalo Bill has a lot going on in that scene too, because the girl has this dog downstairs is the only thing he freaking cares about in the world. And he's got to go kill her. And now there's this bitch at the door with, asking questions that is nobody's business. So, I think
dude's got problems.
Perspective, like, there's a lot going on.
No, and that actually leads us perfectly into the last thing we'll talk about, because you have to talk about this scene, right? You can't not talk about Buffalo Bill's videotape scene. I'm going to start off by saying what was really interesting about this scene, which I liked it so much, is that most films, when you watch a movie and there's a videotape, somebody's watching a videotape, it just seems so jarring and odd, right? Because again, like, it's a videotape, so everybody's breaking the fourth wall. That's what Bill's doing. But it's so interesting because it felt to me kind of seamless, because that was already the style in which Demme was filming the movie, was that. And there is a subtle thing in it, the performance. But I guess this is one of the ones I don't even think we need to really technically analyze it. We could just kind of, obviously tell me what you thought the first time you saw it, Kristen.
Oh, well, my parents had very little boundaries when it came to movies. So I saw it in 91. Like, let's see, I was 5 or 6 when this movie came out. I just remember thinking, wow, he looks like he's having so much fun.
He was having a lot of fun.
And I think it's interesting because I read the book probably, I think, in high school or something, and I don't think this scene is in the movie. I mean, in the book, it's more like he's watching a video of, some like 1960s starlet, playing in a pool or something. And he thinks it's his mother, and he's watching it with the dog, but the scene is sort of like from the perspective of the dog, and the dog's like bored of this ritual or something like that. So yeah, this is definitely a less complex scene, but it says so much about his character. And like I said, it's when he's the most happy. Even when a character is evil, we kind of like to see them happy.
100%.
And I like that the videotape was a new thing in 91. People had never been able to film themselves in whatever they wanted dancing around in front of a camera before. So it's interesting to see that this is the way he affirms his like true identity to himself, because he can't share it with other people. And it's a way that he like, as a costumer, because I worked in the costume shop when I was in college, of course. You have to try on clothes in front of the mirror, and you have to like turn and see how they look and everything. And sometimes you end up kind of dancing around and listening to music and stuff like that. So I have always seen this as like I could see myself do it, not in a human skin, but like it's a very natural thing for a woman to do.
Hey, have you tried the human skin thing? I mean, I'm just saying.
Well, it's very expensive, but
it can be.
The point is, what I love about it, yes, it's so natural. And actually it makes me think of a cut scene that I saw once of him sewing with the skin on a sewing machine that I did not truly understand the intensity of until I learned to sew with a sewing machine, because he messes something up and he's like, fuck. And I'm like, oh, I get that, because like messing something up and like having to rip out the seams and do it over it again is like so frustrating. But then when something looks like really good, I mean, I guess this means something completely different to a costumer. But
no, I mean, yeah.
From that perspective, it really does like he's not gonna win, but this is just a really fun scene to watch. Like I don't know, because the rest of the movie is really dreary and sad kind of, and it's a lot of like intense procedural stuff. So yeah, it's definitely the like sort of fun and games part of the movie.
I mean, it stands out. I could tell you. Yeah. I don't know, like
But here's the reason I actually had this. The last part where he has the scarf on his arms like this. What is that reminiscent of when he had it's the wings of the butterfly.
Oh yeah, the moth. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, the moth.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't think anybody realizes that like he has so much alignment with these animals, with the moths. And that's the last shot is like it, and it's when he's like the most like statuesque, the most self-actualized.
Right.
He has these like wings, and nobody has really pointed out that symbolism before, at least not that I know of. But that's
I never caught it.
It's him becoming this death's head moth, this metamorphosis.
Right.
This is coming out of his pupa.
Oh man. I never thought. Good, right? That's awesome. That's awesome.
No, yeah, man. That's great. I love that.
So Sean, how old were you, man, when you saw this?
When I saw it right after it came out. I remember I saw it the year it came out. I was in Tahoe. I still remember it was one of those movies that I still remember very well the first time I saw it, because my family used to go to a cabin in Tahoe, a very creepy, totally haunted cabin that was really old, and we'd always rent horror movies when we'd stay there. I remember going there. We rented Silence of the Lambs, and I was just like, "Holy shit!" Like I loved it. Like, I mean, I was really young, but it came out in '91, so I would have been 9.
Oh my god!
And so, like, that was like my family too. But yeah, I don't know. I really liked it a lot.
So you were not. So I guess my question would be more like, you're 9 years old and you're seeing that scene, right? Because that scene is like, I mean, that scene sticks out because the first time
Yeah.
you see it, you're like, what the fuck is this? Right. It's
Well,
just, it's,
I remember
Maybe guys get more freaked out by it. Like I've never been freaked out by this scene.
well, I was, but I was
Yeah.
also young as well, too, when I saw it the first time. And it just, and right. It's been mimicked before, right? It's been referenced so many times. Right. Exactly. Absolutely. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, so 9-year-old Sean.
Well, yeah. when I first, I remember like I was a little bit privy to that scene because my best friend at the time, Dave, we'd always watch these crazy, and he had 2 older brothers, and we were always just like pretty raunchy, all of us. And he was like, "Yeah, dude, that would be Silence of the Lambs. This guy sticks his dick between his legs and he pretends that he's a transsexual." Like, I was like, that sounds crazy. But so I remember like watching that scene, being like, "Oh, this is that scene. This is like." I remember thinking that it was just better in the sense of where I just thought that was, I don't know, what am I trying to say? I thought that scene was great. Like even when I first watched it, because I just thought sort of, oh yeah, there's a scene where a guy like sticks his dick between his legs, and that's crazy. But then this scene has so much more going on, where I remember thinking there's so much more being said about his character than just the fact that he did what he did with it. You know what I mean? I don't know.
No, you hit on something again that Kristen is saying too as well. And I think really quick is that no, even that kind of even makes sense. And I think I told you both this. The one thing that really stuck out to me, other than Ted Levine's like just masterful performance of this, is that there's that part, right, where he gets really close to the camera. And we know that's when he's, he's doing a little tucking, right? Right. Yeah. There was something so odd. You notice that when he did that, he's doing it, and he literally looks so uncomfortable. He looks like almost like bashful, right? When he kind of looks to the side, kind of is just the weirdest thing to me. And I think that kind of makes a little bit of sense now. It's definitely bashful. It's definitely uncomfortable. It
seemed like he was annoyed for a second, like that he even had to do it, like.
Well, but the thing is, that was actually his doing. He actually, Ted Levine, like that was him. Actually that scene, I was reading about it. That scene was going to be not really much. It wasn't going to be what it ended up being, because Ted Levine, he had kind of gotten really into that character, and he had gone to the local trans bars in his home, or like wherever he was, and interviewed people there and just kind of talked about sort of the way they move and the way that, you know what I mean, just sort of the way how do I be a man who's dressing like a woman who actually might want to be a woman, and that was, and when he was one who chose the song, the Goodbye Horses, for that, because they were originally going to use a Bob Seger song, and it was going to be much more hokey and just sort of like that
would have sucked.
Yeah, and that was all Ted Levine, and he and the dance they did, that was all improvised, like all that.
Oh man, I mean,
that was interesting.
Yeah, because again, like the one thing that when I think of the scene, like it almost makes me think a little bit about there's the very beginning. Again, I won't digress too far, but the very beginning of No Country for Old Men, when Tommy Lee Jones' character is saying that you gotta put your soul at hazard, right? But you gotta say, yeah, I'll be a part of this world. And I think it's like the first time that we get to see as an audience, right, that the other people don't see, is that this is the world that they're going to be in, right? And I think that's just it, is that I think that really, like, I know that Kristen sees it a certain way, but a lot of people were seriously like disturbed by it, right? Like, because again, it was just, because that's not something at the time, right? Even at the time in the 90s, you didn't see that on screen. Certainly didn't see it on TV, but you definitely didn't see that.
Maybe it's also like a queer perspective too, because like I really want, I've tried to talk to a few of my trans friends about that character, and if they consider Buffalo Bill to be trans and stuff like that. It's a difficult question, because like, do you want to say, yes, we want to claim this character as part of our community, or do we want to like distance ourselves from serial killers because that's sort of the stereotype? So, it's difficult to talk about, but I think the character is so awesome. Like, as far as a serial killer goes, like, you have Norman Bates at the end of Psycho in his mother's dress, and it's almost hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
There's really nothing hilarious about what he does, though. I mean, like you said, it freaks people out or something, but that's a very common thing for trans women to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like a trans woman might watch that scene and not think that it's all that weird, other than the human flesh wig he's wearing.
Well, I think though too as well, but you're going to put that in concert with the fact that you've already seen him abduct a girl. You put a face to this, right? And he is making. We understand now though when we see that and he's doing his thing. It's like, you're fucking made, dude. Like, and then it comes together like you're making a goddamn woman suit. What the fuck is wrong with you, man? But that's the scene, right? That's the scene where it kind of really ties it all together for him.
It reaches a level of weird, is what you're saying.
Yeah. I'd say yeah, absolutely. I definitely would say.
I guess I live on that level, and
But no. So yeah, man, Silence of the Lambs. Again. If you haven't seen our last couple episodes, part 1, part 2 of the Silence of the Lambs, then go check it out. I've left the link below. But before we go, Kristen Grady, what are you up to? What are you working on? Well, how about this? Actually, we probably shouldn't go there because you just said that. But you had mentioned, no, we can't even go there either. So just tell us something that we could read about you on the a11.net. What do we got going on?
Most of my articles really, I just would love it if somebody would just read it and say, hey, great job. We need more people getting to this work because we're putting so much into it, and I want it to help people. I want it to uplift people. I want them to understand things that they never did before about movies that have been out for a really long time, and I really care about this. So please read my work.
And yes, and I've left a link below for your work on Silence of the Lambs, which is just a fantastic, absolutely awesome article.
That's my favorite one that I've done so far.
It's really good.
I'm from Virginia, like the area that it was shot around and everything, and I've seen it a million times and stuff, but it's the weirdest thing to say, but it feels like home to me.
Okay. yeah, absolutely.
It's a weird thing to say, but like, you ever just have if you see a movie on in the background or something, it's like, it's familiar, it's comforting in a way because you're so familiar with it, even though it's about a serial killer who skins women and dances around.
I was raised in the Inland Empire of California, so there's a lot of weird ass movies where I'm like, that seems like home. But yeah. And so Sean, man, I do want to talk. You've done quite a few articles for the a11.net. Well, I think one of the ones that definitely should get more eyes on is your work on the lighthouse. That was really, really interesting. You want to tell us a little bit about what you found out about that, kind of what your style is on that, what your take was on the lighthouse?
Just that it was again, I don't know, just the whole filmmaking procedure behind that movie. I shouldn't say just the whole. I guess the procedure, just everything about it. They incorporated very, they just really put themselves in their characters and in their role and in the environment, and it really comes through. It really translates so well in that movie. Like, I could. That's a whole thing, a whole book to open. But that movie's so good.
I'm going to put a link below to that too as well. An amazing article. But again, like I said too, check out their work. I'll let the link below. And again, guys, where can we find you, Kristen?
At Yes, She's Got Moxie on Twitter, or imaginationforsale.blog. I'm also on Instagram at Lady Moxie Jane.
Yes.
More standardized handles.
It's all right. The longer the better of this one. Sean?
My articles are really good.
I've got my website with a lot of my writings that are online. It's Sean, SEANM as in Martin or man baby, Sanford.com, SeanMSanford.com. And then just writing the reviews for Horror Oasis and Horror DNA, book reviews.
Heck yeah, man. Nice. Thank you so much, guys. Again.
Also, my Instagram is skaters who read underscores between all the words.
Awesome, man. Yeah. And again, of course, a11.net. You guys could find us at the a11.net. We also have a Facebook page, and again, the 811 as well for Instagram. I'm trying to think. Obviously, social media is not my thing, so I don't even know what else we have. We have some other stuff, I'm guessing. So anyway, but again, Silence of the Lambs. Thanks to guys a lot. Thanks a lot. I can't talk all of a sudden. Cool. All right, guys. Until next time.
Sweet.